I'd like to do an audio check for those online. We're just about to begin. So those media outlets who are online, can you please indicate via yes or no if you can hear us and if you'll be able to hear the responses?
He said, I can't ring it, that's why they wrote it.
There you go. We're going to have to wait some of it because there'll be questions.
I'll ring the questions.
There you go.
Brett and Alessia, are you able to hear us? Testing, testing.
That was good, though. Good 2 days.
Yeah,
eh?
it was. It was good. The ghost is, well, they're
There are
the
ghosts.
ghost of 202.
I mean, there's not talking right now, so it's gonna be like, once they start talking, right, like if you start talking to the microphone, like you get a better level.
Testing.
Testing, 1, 2, 3, testing, testing.
Testing.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Testing. Testing.
Testing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay, so I am prepared to relay written questions. If you'd prefer to come off mute, we'll try and finagle something, and I'll just lean the microphone into my computer. So I'll wait for one of you to register a request.
We're taking questions right after that.
And for everybody's reference who's listening in, the press release will be going out shortly, and it will include links to the declaration and the resolutions that were passed as part of the summit. Okay, I'm not sure if anybody's typing right now, but I'm going to open this up audio-wise. So if you want to ask your questions directly, you can go ahead and do that. All right, first question is from the Canadian Press. The Métis Nation of Ontario's agreement with Canada requires a formal recognition of their self-government in 2 years. It seems there's going to be something eventually. What will you all do?
Is what? I didn't understand you.
The Métis Nation of Ontario's agreement with Canada requires a formal recognition of their self-government in 2 years. It seems there's going to be something eventually. What will you all do?
Start?
Go ahead then.
Well, let me first start. I want to again express my gratitude to the Chiefs of Ontario, the Inuit leadership, and of course others that came from Quebec and Eastern Canada, other First Nation leaders. I think it's a measurable aspect of what needs to happen. What has taken place in this country, in retrospect, how the governments themselves, provincial, federal, municipal, educational institutions, business, industry, have forced us to come together in the sense of ensuring that we need to look now at all those fraudulent claims, the fake Métis, the fake First Nation people that are coming, and I think the word Britannians is there, and I'll have Chief Eyre speak on that. But in our regards, we've been forced into a situation where, again, we have to come to our own defense to protect our identity, protect our future, protect our rights, and protect our assets and the right to those assets. That we have a privilege based on the Constitution of this country, and we bled, and we suffered, and we paid the ultimate price to receive. So we're at a place now where we're telling Canada, if Bill 53 is dead, and you're still going to come back with a second round, let us tell you ahead of time we're preparing ourselves, and we will be there to meet you. And we hope it'll be meeting us before you go out to try to create some kind of new people in this country. In the meantime, Bill 53, in my view, there's no way it can go ahead, given a court order against it, given that the Saskatchewan president has withdrawn, given that he'd have to go back and reconsult. Bill 53 is dead. So, but the issue is, the question you have posed is absolutely true. We know they're coming back. We know they're coming ahead. So that's why Chief Air has committed to a second summit and will be moving on that in a very, very near future.
So again, miigwech. You know, one of the things that has to be taken from our 2 days summit here is everything that we've shared with each other, with the people that were listening right across the globe, I understand, is the truth. Everything you heard is the truth. There was no guessing. I think, I heard, is this what happened? No, it's the truth. So as our summit on Indigenous identity fraud comes to a close here, I urge each of us to reflect on the significance of the discussions. Indigenous identity fraud is not a harmless act. This summit has demonstrated that our nations are committed to wholeheartedly addressing this matter with the urgency and dedication it deserves. We are grateful to all the presenters and panelists for the productive dialogue and sharing that took place here. I leave here too today, this week, our brother, our Inuit brother and president, of the stories and the pictures he shared with us. I haven't forgotten them in the last couple of hours since I've seen them. For what we've been through to the government, and you know, because you're the one that are pushing the thumbs, trying to see our kids yet today, no matter how far north, south, east, and west we may come from, our kids are still laughing and having fun. That is because of the love that we give them, and they know who they are. And that is what we're here to protect, is the future of our lands and of our rights. And I too, as with the presidents and the Grand Chiefs here, we will work hard, and Summit 2 will happen in Ontario. So I look forward to our next gathering with all the leaders that were here today, and then some. Miigwech.
Nakamig, it has been quite an honor to be invited to the Manitoba Métis Nation and the Federation, most certainly to discuss the issue of Indigenous identity fraud, where we as Labrador Inuit are faced with a group in Labrador who are claiming to be Inuit, and having first claimed to be a Métis Nation Association, and then to be claiming to be a Métis nation, and then now it is quite challenging, especially to try to work with Canada and the provincial government of Newfoundland Labrador, where we are represented by Member of Parliament, Yvonne Jones, who is supposed to be representing all Labradorians, including Labrador Inuit and the Innu Nation. And that is not happening. And also in Newfoundland and Labrador government, the provincial government, there is a minister responsible for Indigenous affairs and reconciliation. And that minister is claiming to be Inuit also. And so we have stopped any meetings with the provincial government of Newfoundland and Labrador, especially where we know that that minister who is claiming to be Inuit will be attending that or those meetings. And to us, that is a conflict of interest. And we cannot work with a provincial government or the government of Canada where we know that it will not help Labrador Inuit to move forward. We have to have the trust and the respect of both Canada and Newfoundland. And certainly not be lied to again, because it is all about lies.
Chief Moore-Frappier and Minister Goodon, if they'd like to add any additional comments.
Sure. I think that really we have to move the conversation from race to sovereignty. And that's what we have to be doing here, because we know that the MNO does not have that. They're just talking about race. They are looking at themselves and looking at building a nation on, looking at the colonial record and saying they have a native ancestor from 1850 and calling themselves Métis. So we have to start talking about nationhood, and we have to talk about sovereignty. And when we switch that conversation from race to sovereignty, I think that we're going to start to see a different kind of conversation. So miigwech.
We have a follow-up question from the Canadian Press. You've all been saying for the last 2 days you're committed to fighting Indigenous identity fraud, but what I assume you would all call legitimate Indigenous groups like ITK were invited. Do you fear this will increase divisions rather than bringing people together for a common goal? And I believe that the initial response was requested from Grand Chief Pokwe.
Did you understand it?
Oh, I'm very sorry, President
You
Lamb.
talk loud, I know you're whispering.
Because I'm afraid it's reverberating.
But don't worry
Did
about
you want me to
that.
repeat again?
Yeah, ask again.
I'm so sorry. Let me try that again. Okay. You've all been saying for the last 2 days you're committed to fighting Indigenous identity fraud, but what I assume you will call all legitimate Indigenous groups like ITK were invited. Do you fear this will increase divisions rather than bringing people together for a common goal?
Yes, thank you for that question. And the Nuncio Graham is a member of the Inuit Upright of Canada, ITK, as well as Inuit and Nunavut and Nunavik. And I, as president of Nuncio Graham, am a board member. And this issue pertains to the Labrador Inuit. And so where the Nunavut Community Council is the issue. And the ITK at this time has looked at Nuncio government and the Innu Nation, who are directly, I could say, impacted by the Nunavut Community Council. And so we believe that the Nunavut government and the Innu Nation have the credibilities to say to the Manitoba Métis Federation at the summit, and most certainly to speak to the true experiences that we have had to go through, and it is about true stories about how Labrador Inuit and the Labrador Innu have had to live with colonialism issues, where Labrador Inuit have been dismissed and ignored for far too long on issues that are important to them, such as language, economic development, and even just to feed families. Food insecurity is very big, and most certainly where our caribou, the Georgian caribou herd, has now been banned for 13 years. And we have no support from the government of Newfoundland and Labrador in terms of helping us, because we are experiencing very high food costs, and most certainly the support that we see that is going to the Nunavut Community Council is far greater than it is to the Labrador Inuit and the Labrador Innu. And so what I'm saying is that Labrador Inuit had to work very hard for over 30 years to negotiate a land claim. And most certainly where the Labrador Innu are negotiating a land claim. And to see to have a community council get this memorandum of understanding. And with the member of parliament being within the federal system and the Minister of Indigenous Affairs and Reconciliation being in the Newfoundland and Labrador government system certainly undermines the credibility of the systems. And so we, as Labrador Inuit and Labrador Innu, are not happy with that. And so there has to be something done. And we certainly appreciate the support and assistance of the Manitoba Métis Federation.
I would assume that the Manitoba Métis Federation would also like to respond to that question.
Yes, and thank you very much, President Lamp, and you explained it very well. As I'm not sure if everyone knows, but ITK was invited, and as was explained by President Lamp, he sits on the council and represents ITK here as well as the Nunavut government. You know, unfortunately, everyone who is in leadership responsibility sometimes is pulled in different directions. I echo what Regional Chief Hare has said, that the next summit is likely to be bigger because there's folks who see what we've started here and know and see what's happening in their own territories, in their own communities. Everyone who is a legitimate Indigenous nation in Canada and beyond has felt the impact of this identity fraud and theft. This is, as we've always said, the first step. The momentum is building. You can feel it already from 2 days, the momentum that's being built. So, you know, but going back to the question of whether it's causing division, it's causing division between the legitimate nations and the unlegitimate nations. And I'm not sure that that isn't a positive thing, because we need to, and what we have been doing in the last 2 days is calling out the folks who are pretending to be us, who are trying to be on the land, who are trying to take our language and our cultures. This division that is being suggested is not a bad thing, because I think legitimate Indigenous rights holders, legitimate Indigenous nations will be coming together, because this is affecting all of us. Thank you.
Regional Chief here, do you have any comments?
You know, again, listening to ourselves here as leaders, and I heard the word division. You know, all our leaders my colleagues in Ontario and right across the country, we're not going nowhere. I sit here proudly over the years that I represented and fighting for our rights, for our communities, our people. I've already went through in the double digits in prime ministers. I think I'm in triple digits with the ministers of the cabinet people. So we're not going nowhere. Our president here, the Inuit from the far north, talks about food costs. Again, this is where I underline, for us to be able to protect our communities, our territories, in ways of having our own laws. Because when it comes to food costs, that is their territory to hunt in. I know for a fact that in your area, the far north, helicopters go up there and take trophy hunters. Now you take that trophy hunting versus putting food on the table. I, as a leader in the far north, if I experienced that, I would not be happy either. So today, these groups that are making false claims have been are being put on notice. Government, institutions, and industry have been put on notice. Our people are waking up. As I mentioned at the beginning of the summit, we will not stand for the theft of our lands, our rights, resources, stories, and most importantly, we will not stand for theft of our ancestors. We know that Canada is still trying to decide what will happen with Bill 53. Following the Alberta court case decision and the MNS withdrawing its support for the bill, we maintain that the bill has been deeply flawed from the start and continue to call on Canada to kill Bill 53 until there is proper due diligence to verifying the MNO's claims and consult with the First Nation leadership, the rights holders. As Ontario Regional Chief, I lead, and I'm a spokesperson for our leadership. But it's the right holders, it's the chiefs that you must dialogue with. Thank you.
Next question is from Brett Forrester, CBC Indigenous. How confident are you in the ability of the federal government to actually deal with this issue? Are you comfortable with the idea of colonial authorities regulating and verifying Indigenous identity? President Chartrand, I think you should start with that one.
Well, I think that matter was openly discussed at the forum here, and it easily came to a conclusion we can't allow government to start deciding who we are. In fact, they're doing a hell of a poor job right now by deciding who Indigenous people are in this country. They're allowing so many non-Indigenous people to come and steal the rightful claim of those that have bled, suffered, and paid the price for it. So when you start looking at the future, this summit is beginning to talk about that subject. And the second summit taking place, we'll have that on the agenda. As Regional Air has made clear, they'll decide who should be in their territory and recognized. And if you can prove without a doubt you have potential constitutional rights, I don't think we want to infringe on anybody's constitutional rights. But let's make it very clear. Canada can't just arbitrarily give you that. They just can't make you into Indigenous people just because you say so, just because you find an ancestor 400 years ago. So from our perspective, I think it's clear that we as Indigenous leaders, rights holders, the Red from Métis, will decide clearly through a very thorough process of who can fit and qualify to meet Section 35 rights and fit within our Red River government. And we can prove our history. We can prove our culture, our existence, our wars, and our battles, and our challenges. And how can Canada, who have openly admitted they did not even bother check the definition of MNO, how can they now say they should be in charge of deciding who we are? The mess that's there has created a very challenging opportunity for all Indigenous people in this country. And so it's very clear from our perspective, we will decide who belongs to our Red River government, but we will make it very clear. It must be evidence-proofed. You must show us your history. You must show us your culture. MNO doesn't have one. They take our beadwork, they take our music, they take our flag, they wrap it around themselves, and they call themselves Métis. When asked the question deep inside, tell me your history, they take the ancestors to the First Nation. They have no history. They have no history that can back them up in any form. And if they do, let them go to court like we did. Let them go fight regarding the Constitution's misgivings that they left them out. But from my perspective, they have proven without a doubt they are not Métis themselves, their own selves. Their own president has proven without a doubt they're not Red River Métis or Métis of the West. So from my perspective, I make it very clear, I would not want to see Canada continue to try to interfere, but I see Canada doing this. They are interfering because they're funding them. They're providing resources for them to actively promote and fight against us. That's what they're doing. So in the backdoor way, Canada is causing a great harm by continuing to fund, support, and recognize them as the legitimate rights holders. It's a dangerous position Canada's placing not only us, but all Canadians in this country.
Thank you, President Chartrand. President Lamb, did you want to comment?
Yes, for the Labrador Inuit and Nunavut perspective, as Chief Chartrand says, it is very dangerous, especially where the former MP for Labrador, Todd Russell, who is now president of the Nunavut Community Council, and also Yvonne Jones, who is now the current member of Parliament, and Lisa Dempster, who is the Minister of the Provincial Indigenous Affairs and Reconciliation, to be given the support by the federal government will undermine the Labrador Inuit and municipal government and the Innu Nation. And so it is very dangerous. And so we cannot, as Indigenous peoples in Newfoundland, Labrador, including Ontario or other provincial federations or Métis nations, we cannot afford to see that happen. It will impact greatly the lives of the Indigenous peoples. And so the history of our ancestors, our grandmothers and grandfathers, who have suffered for hundreds of years since first contact, will certainly be greater if these false claimants are given the support to move forward and being recognized by the federal system or provincial systems. And so we cannot afford to see that happen. And so we cannot afford to stop fighting. And we have to continue to fight harder. And it is not just about the current leadership of Indigenous peoples of today. It is, I believe, not now the time to educate our children and our grandchildren about who we are and where we are, and more certainly to educate them about who is not, and more certainly to educate them of truth and lies, the difference of truth and lies.
Mm-hmm.
Regional Chief Hare or Chief Moore-Frappier?
I think Canada has the opportunity to correct themselves at this point. If they continue as they're going, it's colonization 2.0. This week, these last 2 days, we've heard a lot of truths be told, and we do know that there needs to be truth before any reconciliation can happen. I think that this recognition of I don't even want to call them rights, they're assertions for the MNO in our case is no, they have the opportunity to correct that. So I think that's what I have to say about that. Mm-hmm. We're constantly relying on the graciousness of the Crown, so it's time for them to start to listen to us and to take this consultation to actually consult with us. Butch.
I guess I'll echo a couple of things, and that is to the government. We had resolutions and declarations supported here by all of us today. Read and understand, and don't misread the words that were put on there. We mean what we mean business here this week, and it will continue. So I just want to echo them to the papers that we've signed here. They're official. We're officials for our communities. You bet.
As a follow-up question from CBC Indigenous, Nunavut, I hope I did that all right, Community Council and the Métis Nation of Ontario are accusing you all of spreading misinformation about them. They say this rhetoric causes real harm to their members on the ground. How do you respond to that?
Well, if I may, speak again on this issue was raised during the summit, that the first reaction we will see from those that are trying to steal our identity is to first become a victim, claim to become a victim, state they are a victim, and then from there, hope for mercy that'll come across from politicians and others. Because they know they can't defend themselves. They have no history to back themselves up. So what they say now is that these people, these First Nations and Métis and Inuit, are attacking us. They're trying to prevent us from being recognized of who we are. They actually are the ones that need, and I think pointed out by an MP, a Minister of Canada, said, I think Ontario needs to start really declaring and educating truly everybody who they are. And that's very clear. So if MNO wants to come out here and plead that they're being abused, or being attacked, or being misled, or being misinformed, or spreading lies, there was no lies in these 2 days of events that took place here, of speakers after speaker, whether they came from Quebec, whether they came from the East Coast, and whether they came from the West, from Alberta. All of them have made it very clear that they were here to tell the truth and explain the consequences of what's happening to them. And very clear at the end of the day, the immediate reaction from those, of course, that are race shifting, which was said by many good speakers, very eloquent speakers, and very well-researched speakers, that the first reaction will be claim victim and claim that you are being attacked, and claim that you're not being heard, and that you are really an Indigenous person that has been stopped from being and allowed to tell the truth. The truth is, you got no history, you got no facts to back you up. So claim victim all you want, but at the end of the day, we're going to hold you accountable to the truth. The truth is, you have no history, and you're stealing the Red River Métis history to try to claim who you are through us, through our flag, through our beadwork, through our music, everything of that nature, which they don't have. They have no history. So for them to say we're claiming lies and mistruths, well, I challenge them to this issue. Challenge them on my statement. Show me I'm wrong. Show me I'm not telling the truth. And they can't do that because they caught themselves in the corner as race shifters and identity thieves.
Minister Goodall.
Thank you very much, and wholeheartedly agree with President Chartrand. I think if there is anger at what has been said here this week from those people, that it's misdirected. The anger should be directed at the past leaders who made false promises, who made put false ideas into the people who think that in the case of Ontario, who think that they're Métis. They've been told they're Métis for 20 years, but they're not. It's those leaders who misled is where that anger should be directed. The past leaders, the current leaders in Ontario, Métis Nation of Ontario, those presidents, those councils, that's where the anger should be directed at, because those citizens who are victims of the misleading statements, the misleading ideas, planting an idea that they are somehow a nation because of a distant ancestor. I agree with Chief Moore Frappier when we need to talk about nationhood. We need to talk about sovereignty. It's not about blood quantum. It's not about an ancestor. Or in the case of MNO, they love the term brute ancestor. It's about being a part of a nation, about being part of a collective, about being related to each other, about caring for each other, about being on the land and understanding the ways of our people. It's not about connecting to 300 years ago. And that's where that anger should be directed, is at those leaders who misled.
Okay, thank you. We'll stay on the topic of Métis Nation of Ontario and defer to the Chiefs of Ontario for comment on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think I'd like to reverse that, because what about our people who have been impacted by M&O, and you know, before my political career, I was had a career in education. And when you're sitting in a classroom and somebody who does not have a lot of lived experience is the expert in the room, or they're getting a SHRC grant that is, you know, taking away from others, you know, that has an impact on our people as well. And I think that we really have to think about what impacts have already been to us. You know, we fought hard to be in these institutions and to be recognized and have our ways of knowing understood and recognized. And then we have people who come in, you know, learn a hand drum song, and then go running with it, and not having that, not having the word that's coming to my head is anchor, but it's that the roots, the stories behind it, the lived experience behind it, what that means, and taking it for their own and using it for their own benefit is very disheartening as well, and it has impacted a lot of people as well. So I think that we can reverse that question to them as well. So, miigwech.
So, legitimate Indigenous nations need to have the space to call out and discuss these false claims without being accused of lateral violence. We reject that these groups are feeling victimized by this summit. We are the ones that have been victims of the theft of our identities. Again, when I hear that word, lateral violence, and I've heard it directed twice at me from certain people that who are talking about here, I ain't going to react to anything like that. I'm a leader, and you know, I want to do this respectively and truthfully, which I do believe I am doing as a leader. So to be accused of something, that is a very heavy remark, and like I said, that should not be here. So and again, as we all heard, we have pledged to work together to support the dignity of First Nations, Inuit, and Red River Métis, and continue to take the proactive measures to expose those true fraudulent organizations and self-declared governments.
Mm-hmm.
President?
Yes, thank you. And colonialism is alive and well. And most certainly, where Labrador Inuit have experienced being removed from their homeland, and most certainly to be sent, or children being sent to residential schooling. And the leaders that tried to speak have being sent to jail. And most certainly where the medical systems also put Labrador Inuit into sanitariums for TB. And so the systems that were supposed to help you were making you sick, and most certainly making you sick in your mind, your body, and your soul. And a person does not just get sick from the flu or COVID. A person, certainly an Inuit, is sick mentally, especially from intergenerational trauma. So Labrador Inuit are living through various forms of intergenerational challenges. And so we are working against our own governments, federally and provincially. And what do? We have to look for support and assistance from other Indigenous groups across Canada, most certainly to put a light under what's being hidden, and most certainly where the true stories have to come out, where Indigenous people have been suffering for a long time, and most certainly where the systems that have been set up. I'm not speaking to all Canadians. Not all Canadians are trying to be Indigenous. There are some Canadians that are trying to be Indigenous just for the sake of power, after having been an MP or an MHA, and where they have made their money and their pension. And what else do? They have to look for prestige. They have to be seen as someone who is in the history books. And certainly they are going to be in the history books if they do continue to treat Indigenous people the way they are doing today.
Thank you. I have no more questions. Are there any parting remarks from any of the leaders before we close this press conference?
I think one of the things I want to leave food for thought for media is to really reflect what did happen here. What took place? You saw two powerful provinces next door to each other, two different cultures, two different peoples, and you seen the Inuit come in from the east, come together to talk about something that's so pressing and so dangerous. We recognize that this is here to stay right now. We recognize that we're on our own. We recognize that we have no choice but to fight. We're not looking for a fight, but I sure as hell will not sit by and let somebody steal my culture, misrepresent my history, use it as a leapfrog to get ahead and take advantage of opportunities that my people suffered for. This is a new day, a new era today. The declaration, the resolution commits us to moving forward, to stand against those that are about to steal our history, rewrite our history, erase our history, and write their own. We have no choice now. We can't depend on the country of Canada at this point in time. We can't depend on the province at this point in time, nor can we depend on educational institutions at this point, that they'll do the right thing. We have no choice but to hold people accountable, institutions and governments accountable. I think the judge said there's a tsunami coming for those that are claiming to be false, that get leniency on the mean and disruptful client charges that they've been accused of, and they were using the Gladue Supreme Court decision to get leniency and claiming they have an ancestor in Indigenous. I think the real tsunami that's happening, according to what I see, is that the First Nation, the Inuit, and the River Métis have come together. And this is just the beginning. Quebec was here. Eastern Canada was here. Alberta settlements were here. And we have, I think, a powerful message that we have no choice but to fend for ourselves, work together to fight this tsunami of thievery that's coming. And it ain't gonna stop with just MNO. It's beyond. MNO is giving themselves too much credit. This is not about MNO and me. It's MNO stealing. It's a good example, primary example to show. But I think there's a lot out there that we heard in the last 2 days. We have a hell of a job ahead of us. And we are committed to working solid. And the second summit, I can't wait for it. I think it's really going to explore the opportunity. One of the recommendations that will be coming from this summit already is the Chiefs of Ontario have raised that a criminal code must be changed in this country. These individuals that are stealing identity, fraud, as pointed out by Ontario, stealing resources and money away from the rightful inheritors, should be charged for thievery, charged for fraud. But in order to do that, we have to change the criminal code. That'll be part of the next discussion that we'll be working on, demanding that Canada take this seriously and the justice system take it seriously. Should the judiciary will have a tool to punish those that are about to steal the future and steal away from our children and our history and culture and destroy it. We will not let that happen. So a criminal code recommendation is coming from our committee, and we look forward to seeing Canada inherit that, adopt it, and push it through.
Thank you, President Chartrand. I will say there was one more question from the Canadian press, or beg your pardon, yes, it was from the Canadian press. So if you can include that just as the last part of your statement here, and then I'll throw it over to the regional chief. The question was, have you heard from the Crown Indigenous Relations Minister during the summit? If so, what was said, and was he invited? So if you can just add that on to your closing comments, President Chartrand, and then we'll ask the regional chiefs of Ontario to comment.
Well, I think the best way to describe that, no disrespect to the Minister of Crown Relations, Patty Aiju, or the Minister Gary Nasande, I don't think we invited them because we don't want them here. We wanted ourselves to talk about this matter as leaders, as our own governments. We'll invite other governments in the future. But our goal was to talk amongst ourselves, talk about what's happening, talk how serious this matter is, how dangerous this matter is, and the massive effect it not only happens on us today, but generations to come. So eventually, I'm sure the ministers will be asking to be invited, and they should. They should be writing to the regional chief of Ontario, writing to me as the president of the Red River of the Métis of the West, writing to the Johansson, the president of the Inuit Corporation, and asking, can we come to your next summit? Because we want to hear and we want to participate and we want to help and we want to fix the wrongs we have made. That I expect, I hope, the ministers will take that as their recommendation to be at our next summit. Or otherwise, don't bother coming.
So, you know, the ministers, after this week, I'm sure they've heard everything that we have shared with each other here. So again, you know, do your homework, study what you've heard then, if you did hear it, and then at that time, with the president and the president's here, colleagues here, we can talk about where and when we can meet. And another thing I'd like to say, share also is this proving your identity to this group of people. It is not impossible to do that. Hit the pause button if you don't want to kill 53 right away. Hit the pause button then. As they treated Mary Ellen Chappelle, and there was 2 or 3 other ones who claimed they're Indigenous, CBC or somebody, CTV went out and drilled their background right till they were babies and proved that they weren't. Do that to your people right now, to these organizations, Métis. Hit the pause button then, get someone to work with you, the government, and find out each one of them people you have on your membership to prove who they are. We can prove where our babies come from and ourselves. They did that to Mary Ellen. That tells me it can be done. So why rush into trying to react to you, to what was happening? We're not going to react. We're going to take care of business. We want to take care of our communities. So, with that, yeah.
You're here. Okay, thank you.
Yes, and certainly as a Nuncio government, we have been working with the federal government and the provincial government, and it's been a challenge. Most certainly, where we have not been given a favorable response from the province on the issue of the minister responsible for Indigenous Affairs and Reconciliation. And we have been working with the minister responsible at the federal system, and we are continuing to work through the challenges that we have. But we will look for any avenue that there might be to continue this fight. And most certainly, today there were declarations signed and a resolution or resolutions passed. Those for Labrador, Inuit, or Nuncio government are major steps. And if nothing comes out of those documents coming out, or a response from Canada or Newfoundland, there's something wrong, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
Just because the Canadian press has asked for clarity on this one last question, has Minister Ananda Sangri reached out to anybody at the table?
No, not me.
Not me.
No.
Nope.
All right. This concludes our press conference for today. Thank you very much for your time. If you have any follow-up questions, please reach out to the Media Relations and Communications Specialists
Thank you.
who are associated with the
Thank you.
Indigenous
Thank you.
Nations. Thank you.